Um, okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lorinda Garcia, and I'm founder of Be Change. And welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Click to Disconnect, where we will be discussing cyberbullying and how it affects the well-being of young, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex people. We're just waiting a couple more minutes until a couple more of our participants, our key speakers, will be joining us. So if you can just please stand by. In the meantime, I just want to let you know a couple of things that will be helpful for your Hangout experience. So first of all, we'll be encouraging people to submit their questions and comments as we go through the webinar, and that can be done using the Q&A button that you can see on the main screen if you are using Google+. So if you are logged in via Google+, you can post your questions for all of the speakers to have a look at, and we will acknowledge and address your questions as we go through. Unfortunately, we won't be able to respond to your questions by text, so we'll be interacting with you verbally. So please feel free to add your questions and your comments there. And then the other thing is that we'll also be accepting questions and comments that are coming in via social media, by Facebook, by Twitter, also by YouTube and Google Plus as well. The Be Change team is monitoring discussions that are happening on all the various social media channels and bringing in, hopefully we'll be able to bring in a broader voice into this discussion as well to make this truly worthy of the internet. And then the other thing is that we also welcome you to share the links. So if you want to share the Google Plus link or the YouTube link to your friends on social media, please do, because the more people we get to that have a chance to participate, I think the richer that our discussion will be. Okay, so I think let's switch over to the next slide. We're going to start the discussion by really posing the question, you know, what is cyberbullying? What does it mean to people? Because for some people it's a new term, and they don't really understand the context. And I think, and so the way that we're going to kick this off is from a discussion. So we have a number of key speakers joining us today, 9 in total. And just to help with the flow of the conversation, I'll be throwing questions to our speakers, but also doing a quick, asking you to make a quick introduction for yourselves as well, and that way we can keep the conversation going. So in answering the question, what is cyberbullying? I'm going to switch over to the stop sharing screen now. Yep. Great. So hi, I'm Lorindo. And one of our other discussions that I'll be asking the question, what is cyberbullying, is Nabila from KL. So Nabila, can you give us a hello there? Welcome from Kuala Lumpur. Could you give us a quick introduction before you actually share with you your views on what cyberbullying means to you?
Hi guys. So cyberbullying, it's basically bullying is any action to demean, threaten, or cause harm, both physically and mentally. And cyber means, you know, that the cyberbullying means that the bullying happens through technological means, and it could be through, you know, phone, text, social media, chat, etc., etc. So it has. So it's basically like what we see, but you know, it's yeah. I think throughout the discussion we will see how different it is now that technology is involved.
Right. Okay, and Nabila, just to help people understand how you've been brought into the discussion, so can you tell us a bit about your background, the work that you do?
Right now I manage a few websites regarding education, and I also teach, and currently I'm focusing on teaching speech and drama. So teaching speech and drama to kids to as part of so we also have we introduce themes such as bullying, but indirectly instead of having to say oh bullying is wrong. So we make them enact scenes to address issues such as this.
Okay, all right. So I guess your definition of bullying is really informed by your experience as a educator, right?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay, great. So thank you. And with that, I want to then pose the same question to a colleague who's coming from an organization in Jakarta, and Ryan from Arus Pelangi. Ryan, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. So can you tell us a little bit, before we launch into the question, can you just tell us a little bit about Arus Pelangi and your role?
Okay, Aris Pelangi is Indonesian Gay, Lesbian, Transgender Federations who based in Jakarta. We concerns our organization focusing these issues about advocacy towards LGBT and human rights. Yes.
Okay, great. And so in your response to the question, I mean, what does cyberbullying mean to you?
Cyberbullying is a bullying in a social media and also in it's also take place in using electronic technology, including devices and equipment such as cell phones, computers, tablets, and as well as communication tools, including social media sites, text messages, chat, and websites.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So I mean, we've had a definition of cyberbullying, but I think what would be helpful for people is to hear some more concrete examples. And with that, we are able to present in this webinar a number, or this hangout, a number of different perspectives from people's personal experiences there. So to kick things off, we have our team at BeChange has collected a pre-recording of a person by the name of Kat in Thailand, and she has prepared a recording just to tell us all about her experience in cyberbullying and how it's affected her as a transgender person in Thailand. So we'll be sharing this link via a showcase, which is a feature on Hangout. So you'll see the link coming through, but also the link will be shared on Google Plus as well. So stand by for the link, and for the participants, we'll also be sharing that through the group chat if you haven't seen it through Showcase. So just stand by, click on the link, and then we'll call everybody back. The clip is about 1.5 minutes. Yep. Okay, so just stand by. We're getting the link. So just hang on there. The host here is wrangling the Google Sheets right now. So just stand by. Sorry about the delay. Timo, could you
Yep.
tell us, while we're just getting the link, can you tell us a bit more background about Kat?
Well, basically, she identifies as a male to female transgender lesbian. And what we'll see in the video is how other people in the trans community have reacted to her identification.
Sure. And
That's
just to introduce Timo. Timo is part of the BeChange Foundation team based in Bangkok. And sitting next to Timo is Nada. Nada, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Nada. I'm a transgender representative from the online communities, and I have experience as a member of the trans community. Almost spent time like in the cyberspace like over 10 years now. It's like a second class, yes. So now I run the online counseling program called TRBC's Experts.
Great, thank you. So the link is now available in Showcase. So if you can have a look at it there, you'll see that in Showcase. We'll also drop it in. We're ready to go. We'll also be sharing just a word. The volume is a little bit soft, so if you're having difficulty hearing Kat speaking, then you can switch on the subtitles there, and it will allow you to see what she's saying. We'll also be sharing our screen from our side, so you can see it with the captions as well, if that's easier for you. And I'll come back in about 1.5 minutes. So see you in 1.5 minutes.
My name is Vitan Mercy. I'm almost 5 years old. I work as translator, translate the documents from English to Thai and Thai to English. My status right now is MTM, transgender and lesbian, on homework for 6 months, almost 7 months right now. The challenge I have faced as transgender lesbian as is are not many person who believe this kind of people exist in this world, especially in this country. Even I have proof, even I have a chart, even I had a strong reference, I still don't believe. But that's okay. I'm well. But the most important thing is to say transgender lesbian not exist in Thailand. And then they threatened me a lot, a cyberbully, in many pages of MTF transgender, saying I am the humiliation of all MTF transgender, mostly because of a lot of women, not men like them. I'm unorthodox of my behavior and my looks, my lifestyle, my past.
Okay. So we'll stop there. And we'll stop there and just go back to Timo. I mean, so I apologize if the quality wasn't as great, but just Timo, can you just help give some summary in terms of what was the experience that Kat was trying to convey to us?
Okay, there were clearly some problems with the audio. The thing is, many people in the trans women community just don't accept the fact that you can be both transgender and lesbian. So they don't accept her as a transgender person. And so they've been throwing abuse on her in cyberspace, and most recently also threats of sort of physical actions in where she works in real life.
Okay, and what was there? I mean, the link is available for people to see the entire clip after the hangout. But Timo, do you have more information on which spaces that that Kat was having being abused and suffering from cyberbullying?
Facebook.
On Facebook, mainly on Facebook. Were these in closed groups or in open forums or both?
I'm not. Do you know the details, Mark?
Yeah. The bullying that Kat has been faced is as an insider. So she faced a huge impact of the trans member from sub communities that they linkage together against her because her gender expression, and also because she present herself through the mass media, for example, on many television program channels. So she received a huge impact against her based on the like a very famous community web boards at like in Thailand called Pantip, for example. That's almost every single comments against her and like look at her like a freak person, something like that.
Right. So Nada, as somebody who is trying to build up, much more unity and create safer spaces for trans people in Thailand. I mean, so how do you respond? I mean, what's your reaction when you hear of Kat's experience?
So the cast experience is not just something brand new, okay? Since work in this field about 10 years, so I know it's like normal for people. As we know, like we are like gender expert in Thailand, we know that biological sex, gender expression, gender identity, or even sexual orientation is interrelation, not like connected like a same set. But maybe not like in common that everyone knows. Even in Thailand, also like being transgender individuals, like what about it, the relation between each single transgender and social perception has like a uniqueness. For example, like almost society recognize transgender as a person who want to trans, so they gender identity or gender whatever as a gender person into the opposite sex. So the social perception will recognize that, okay, if you was born as male and you want to trans to be female, so you have to take everything that what female should have. So in the binary gender, so it means you have to take female roles with together with you. So if you think or express something different, that's a problem.
Right.
So it's not about society or social perception. It's about you. You have to do whatever to bring back to the the norms that people society accept.
Sort
Sure.
of stereotypical femininity.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I understood that correctly, a lot of the bullying or the comments or the negativity, or in some cases the threats, are when people don't fit social norms or common understandings about what transgender is, or let alone what gender and sexuality means. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. We do have some other people who will be joining us later to share their personal experiences, but there is some technical difficulty. So going from the how cyberbullying is experienced by an individual, we want to then contrast that to how cyberbullying might affect an organization or a group of people. And so with that, I want to introduce Ben Sui from Singapore, who's joining us from Singapore today. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm now in Singapore. It's hot and sunny here. I'm good.
So
About
which organization are you working with?
I'm now with Ping.sg. We are basically a movement started from the ground up, believing in the freedom to love. And this year it's our 7th year doing the event, which is happening next Saturday. So if you're in around Singapore, do come down for the whole event. It's gonna be a fun one. Yeah.
Great. So thank you for taking the time out. I know it's 1 week away from the big event, and last year there were 26,000 people, so it's a pretty big event. How has cyberbullying affected Pink Dot and the work that you and your team does?
Increasingly, we're getting a lot more vocal and I would almost say vile comments on our videos and on our YouTube videos as well. I think this year, because we have a further engagement on Facebook, we boosted our videos, and so our campaign videos went much further than the people that normally like the page. So what happened was on one Saturday morning, I just found out that my Facebook account was disabled straight away, and our campaign video was taken down by Facebook because too many people actually flagged it as nudity or pornography, and that has never happened before towards Pink Dot. This is the very first time as well. So clearly that there is a very vocal but anonymous opposition towards Pink Dot as an organization and towards the movement. And also on our YouTube page, there's a lot of very toxic comments towards LGBT people as a whole, and that's increasingly getting more and more vocal. Yeah.
And how would you describe? I mean, are you able to identify the groups, or is it individuals, or is it organized? I mean, what's your observations as an organization?
I think right now there is quite an organized group from very vocal minorities of Christians and Muslims in Singapore that are trying to, I think, undermine what Pink Dot stands for. And that's been growing for the past 2 years, especially after what happened last year. So last year, we had a very anti-gay pastor who came out publicly against Pink Dot and what it stood for. And also then a whole bunch of Muslims, a whole group of Muslims did join him in also doing this whole Wear White campaign against Pink Dot. So there is definitely a growing voice of dissent towards the Pink Dot movement, and that is reflected in, I guess, the comments that is happening on our Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel. It's something that I guess it's so out in the open now. It's very organized, and on our hand, we just have to let it happen because it's the whole balance between free speech and also safety. I think that's something we can talk about later, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just a final point. So, seeing as though the bullying, the way, the abuse, and also a lot of the hate that is coming out on, that is manifesting on various social media channels, how does that affect Pink Dot as an organization or as a movement or the committee? I mean, do you have the capacity to deal with this? Or how have you been able to deal with it?
With a bit of humor, I think that's always quite important. As a whole, as a committee-wise, I think we need to be monitoring every single platform very, very closely. So I think if any of the comments get too personal and they border on being antagonistic and calling people, bitches, fat, all those, very bad profanity words, we then have to take them down, and we have to keep at least our online space safe for LGBT people that are frequenting the page all the time.
Right. Thank you. Thanks,
No
Ben.
problems.
Before we go, and because to add an additional layer of observation and perspectives about how cyberbullying is experienced, and we'll hear from Nabila in one moment, I just want to remind the people who are joining us on Google Plus and also on YouTube to please post your questions or your comments in the Q&A section. We'll happily respond to them as they come through. But now, having heard a personal experience of cyberbullying, as well as how an organization has experienced cyberbullying, I'd like to ask Nabila, in your work as being a teacher, how do you see cyberbullying affecting your students, and how do you see it pan out in schools and in other places where you are working?
So this happened recently. So I teach. I'm quite lucky to be able to base my observation based on because I've been teaching the super privileged kids and the very underprivileged, and I can and what happened recently, one of these schools where where all the privileged kids were, what happened was we were playing a game where we were sharing things, and then one of the kids actually came up and said, boasted even that he joined a forum where he and a few of the other forum members persuaded somebody to kill themselves. So this came as a big shock to me. These were 12-year-olds. So and laughingly, he laughed it off. So I was in a state of shock, but it was also very good to see that some of the other kids actually stepping up and saying, they actually took in their own hands to say, I don't think that's right, and and then we didn't manage to address that, but I told the school, and then they took the matter in their own hands. But what I would like to say is that the difference in cyberbullying, that there's a more prevalence for cyberbullying among the privileged compared to the underprivileged, but it's still there. We still see, but the subject matters are different. Yeah, and it's pretty worrying. So as a teacher, this is what what Benjamin said about having Facebook comments, via public Facebook comments, while YouTube comments. People just this is what we wanted to address at an earlier age, so that and we do that by instilling issue of respecting each other. And another thing that I would really like to highlight is that I've recently researched the International Baccalaureate framework for education, because we're used to the British system and everything. And I find that the best way to counter this, when kids actually come up, because they don't know that this is wrong, that as evident from they laughing it off and everything, but and a good way is just by just questioning it, just by throwing back the question at them to say, so why do you say that, or why do you think that's that people say that, why, what is the reason behind that, and then you keep on challenging children, because their minds it's still what do you call it? As a teacher, I'm pretty bad with words. Yeah, they're still being shaped.
Yes.
Yeah, they're still being shaped.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that then there is just because that this is happening online and these interactions are happening online, that the perception among young people is that it's different and perhaps not as real as offline interactions, or do you see things differently?
Yeah, exactly, because we do this, one of the speech and drama games that we play is called Tableau, where we give kids a word and then they have to act it out. So one of the words that we gave out were bullying, and all of the scenes were about physical bullying. And then, so we turned that into a discussion. So what other forms of bullying is available? And then it never occurred to them, and it's pretty funny because these are 12-year-olds, and it never occurred to them that talking bad about other people online is also a form of bullying or slander, or spreading videos that might be that the person who is recorded might feel ashamed of or embarrassed of. They don't see that, so we included that as part of this discussion.
Okay, great. I would like to talk later about how we build more awareness and especially self-awareness, and perhaps a word for this is digital literacy later on in the Hangout. But thank you, Nabila, for your perspectives. And I know time is limited, but I hope people have been able to get a better understanding of the different manifestations of cyberbullying online. We want to turn the discussion now from people's experiences to what data is available. And Timo, I want to go straight to you on this, because unfortunately Justine from UNESCO is having a bit of difficulty joining us right now. But Timo, based on what you've just heard, for the three different perspectives on cyberbullying, how does this mesh with the data that you've had some experience in gathering?
On especially quantitative terms, what we do see is that if you're bullying others in the real world, chances are you're also doing it online, and vice versa. Or if you're being victimized online, chances are it also happens to you in the real world. That's one thing. But also, there seems to be a bit of a circle of bullying or violence, in the sense that victims turn into bullies themselves, and bullies turn into victims themselves. So it all seems to be rather interconnected rather than two separate phenomena.
Right.
That's fun.
Okay. Was there so if I understood that correctly, it's offline experiences inform what is happening online, and vice versa. Especially
for school kids, they tend to be part of the same whole rather than two separate phenomena. That's what our research seems to suggest.
Right. Is there a lot of data on, because I understand that the data that you've been involved in gathering, and that was a collaboration with UNESCO, is that right, in Thailand?
Yeah.
Right.
Some of it, yeah.
Okay. So is there a lot of data on cyberbullying?
There is some data, but much of it doesn't address LGBTIQs separately. So that's something that needs to be looked into.
Okay, all right. So just to help me understand that, so there is a growing body of research into bullying and young people per se, but we don't necessarily know a lot at how it affects young LGBT. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. But also chances are that LGBTIQs will face more of it than people who don't identify with these categories. Because at least that's what our research that we did together with UNESCO shows, that LGBTIQs face overall more bullying than non-LGBTIQs. That's one thing.
Right. Okay, thank you. So I think there's definitely a call for more research there. If we can then turn the discussion now, I mean, obviously we're wanting more evidence to help guide the work that we do. We have heard about how bullying is manifested in different ways, and also I'm curious to know how privacy has an impact on all of these things, and whether or not different spaces, whether there's a distinction between anonymous spaces and spaces that require people to show their identity. I think that plays a lot into how privacy is a factor in this. And so I think in thinking about privacy and also how this has an impact on cyberbullying, obviously we want to create, provide some protection for young people, especially if they are vulnerable for bullying and for online violence, but at the same time try and balance this with having online spaces where people are free to express themselves. And that's a delicate balance there. And we're very fortunate to have Vainashnavi from Google joining us. And so what's Google's take on this, and walking that fine line between protections as well as freedom of expression in the context of privacy?
So that's a great question, Lorinda. And before I start, just want to say thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. It's really important to us as a company that we support the third-party organizations and NGOs that are doing work around this in the region, because really this cooperation between public and private sector is kind of what's going to take us forward as a whole. It's really difficult for a private company to always know the exact local nuances and the local situations and have the data, and that's where organizations like BeChange come in. So thank you for involving us in this, and it's already been a really insightful discussion so far. So it's a really good question that you raised. What is that balance between anonymity and identifying yourself online? If you think about kind of how the internet was first used by historically marginalized communities like the LGBTI communities, anonymity was a huge source of support and a huge really source of comfort for many people who weren't comfortable expressing their true identities offline in the real world, but found an anonymous, initially what felt like a very safe space online to talk about some of the issues they were dealing with. And so, I've spoken to people who it was a great a man I met from Maine, who's now in his late 30s, and he kind of came out and had his whole process when he was in his teens. And I remember him talking about how very difficult it was to do that in some of the very conservative parts of Maine in the U.S., because there was just no community around, there were no role models, nothing. And in that sense, if you look at the current generation of people who are grappling with those identities and coming online, they find a huge sense of solace in those online communities. But that said, there are definitely downsides to anonymity, and that definitely comes in when you talk about things like cyberbullying. So it's a very fine line. And I think even as a company, we've had this debate over and over again about what is the balance between anonymity and full disclosure of identities online. And in full transparency, we haven't always got it right. We've had situations in the past where we said we really thought that everybody should be kind of visible and identified online, and then we realized that there's a huge impact from having anonymous identities. But then how do you deal with issues like cyberbullying? And there are a few ways in which we think about this. The first aspect is to make sure that our platforms don't support cyberbullying. So what does that mean? It means that if you are a teenager on, say, Google Plus, on using Google Plus profile, and you're posting things, by default you cannot share your posts with the public. You can only share it with people who are in your circles. There's no way in which anybody from the public can see that, even if you as a teenager want to do that. And we've all been teenagers. We've all had this propensity to overshare, and we've realized later on that maybe the external environment wasn't very welcoming of those ideas. And so that's safe, but that's a big part of being safe online. And so we've really built that into our safety controls. But then there's also kind of what we do proactively as an organization. And that's where kind of flagging and reporting tools are really important. So when you look at things like anonymous comments on YouTube that will attack someone who's posted a video, you can flag and report those comments, and we will take them down. If the user demonstrates a pattern of doing this, we will shut down that account. And even if the user is anonymous, even if they have a pseudonym online, we will make sure that that kind of content doesn't stay on. And that kind of speaks to what we want our platforms to stand for, and where we want our platforms to go. And we can do that with content that we host, say, on platforms like YouTube.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Vaishnavi, and we really appreciate you having you here with us. I want to throw the idea or the concept of privacy over to Ryan now, and just to add to that. So we've heard from Google in their stance and how they've tried to balance the needs of to protect privacy, to protect individuals and users, as well as to promote spaces that people can express themselves. But I want to ask Ryan, in the work that is being done in Arus Pelangi, Brian, can you tell us, in your experience, how do you think that LGBT in Jakarta what is their approach to privacy? I mean, as an issue, is it important to them? Do you think that being in Jakarta means that they have different needs when it comes to issues around privacy and online spaces? Just unmute there. Yep.
Okay.
Right.
So actually about the privacy, our Sprangy trying to like giving some educations about how to prevent cyberbullying, in the terms of how to making some privacy to doing that. But we have a little bit problems about applications named Ask.fm. Do you ever heard about that?
No, can you
So
explain that?
Ask.fm is a quite popular application, smartphone applications right now. So it's different with Facebook and Twitter because it's just an answer and questions applications. So and it's possible to make ourselves anonymous of that, and there is a lot of cyberbullying amongst LGBT in there, and also it's quite popular in Indonesia. So you can ask, you can put a questions randomly, and random people will answer it randomly too. So it's kind of random things because there's no privacy policy in there. So there is in here there is a lot of cyberbullying amongst LGBT community in Amsterdam.
Right. I see. So that's connected to the ability to be anonymous. You think?
Yeah, I think anonymous isn't always a good way to prevent cyberbullying because of that. You can be anonymous and harass people and still be anonymous. So be brave to stand out if you are mocking or harass people like that.
Sure. Okay. So I want to encourage some cross discussion here. So Nabila, I did see your comment, and I'll bring that up for Ryan in a minute. But Ben, you have an opinion or a question about anonymity and online spaces. You wanna share that with the rest of the group? And
Hi, just asking because I do think that there's very different levels or severity of cyberbullying, which is very dependent on online platforms. And I think many of us brought up anonymous versus non-anonymous platforms. Like just now, you were mentioning Ask.fm, and that has been typed, and that Ask.fm has been tied to many cyberbullying cases in the US. And anonymous apps like Secret or Whisper is also getting very popular now among the LGBT teens. How do we then balance, having that very safe space by providing the anonymity, and also, but not endangering LGBT youth's lives? I think that's always the very fine balance. So Google, I know you've had this problem with Google Plus linking to YouTube. How then can Google help to at least try to make the online place a safer one?
great. Now, Vaishnavi?
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's an ongoing discussion. I don't think we're ever going to come to a standard consensus on what that balance looks like, because it's also evolving. If you had told children, 5 years ago, that they would be divulging their deepest, darkest secrets on apps like Secret and Whisper, for the whole world to see, and even anonymously, they would have said that makes no sense. Why would I want to do that? And yet today, those apps are really, really popular. So there are kind of evolving notions of, there's an evolving way in how people are using technology and how people are using the internet, and that requires us to also develop an evolution in the way in which we think about it. Coming back to the point about the anonymity allowing for a lot of hateful comments and a lot of cyberbullying to take place, I think that we also have to draw a distinction by when we talk about cyberbullying, it's a very broad concept. So there can be comments that are negative or comments that disagree, but then there are comments that end up kind of endangering lives, right? And those are comments that say things like, I know where you live, or I'm going to come and find you, and I'm going to actually inflict harm on you. And those are the comments that we have to be really, really careful about. I really liked the example that Nabila brought up earlier about a student in her class who actually had persuaded someone to kill themselves, but then was very quickly called out by his classmates and by other people in the room, saying that that's not really the best way to, that's really not an acceptable way to deal with this at all. And it kind of talks to the impact of education and awareness. And we've touched on this a little bit before, but if we're going to get to the root of the problem, I think we're going to have to really focus on education and awareness. The fact is that technology is changing much faster than we can evolve with it. Especially if you look at Southeast Asia, the evolution of mobile. There's so many new apps and applications and functionalities available that we can't predict what the use of those applications are going to be. So we've done a number of programs around this. Actually, it's a huge area of concern for us, and my role at Google is to work on our child safety issues across the region. And one of the programs that we've done that's been incredibly effective is a program called Web Rangers, and this really builds on the idea that the best people to teach kids about responsible behavior online are probably other kids. They can convey those messages in a very impactful way. So we actually just had our first global Web Rangers hangout yesterday with Web Rangers from, I think, about 6 countries across Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, Europe, and they all came together in a room and were talking about how, so the way the program works is it's a digital ambassadorship program. We bring students in, we train them on the principles of being responsible digital citizens online and being responsible stewards, and then they come up with campaigns and programs and content to train their peers and their classmates. If you ask us kind of what is the most scalable, sustainable, impactful way to balance this concept of anonymity for safety and anonymity that can be misused, it really boils down to education and awareness, because there's really no other solution that is long lasting and that is scalable and that can actually have a very concrete impact on safety.
So, Vanashvi, it's definitely there a call for strengthening education, and if I find your point interesting that if we as people working or having some exposure in doing work online are having a difficulty trying to catch up with technology, that's even more acutely felt in the education system where they're even lagging behind even further. But we must do our best to try and support educators there. And speaking of educators, I know Nabila, you did have a question on for Ryan to find out, to maybe probe a little bit more about the divide between cities and non-urban areas. Do you want to float that out there, Nabila?
Hi, I've worked with Ryan because I used to live in Jogja, and now I didn't realize that he moved to Jakarta. So it's a pretty nice surprise too. It's like a little reunion. So, having worked in Yogyakarta before, do you see? And this was way back when we were still starting to. We were just introduced to uh, um, phones and social media. And back then, I couldn't really observe anything. So, do you see any differences between uh, the approach needed in addressing bullying, cyberbullying issues in urban areas compared to rural areas?
Thanks, Nabila.
Okay,
Ryan?
actually, we talking. I okay. So I just wrote your your answer, so I can talk it directly. So if we're talking about Yogyakarta, it's since develop it's quite developed since your leave, so it's quite become a urban area. So in the terms of bullying, is there is no specific differences about the rurals and sub-rural areas, and also Yogyakarta is quite uh, it's quite unique because Yogyakarta is a student city, so there's many student here and there's many LGBT students there who express themselves because they are live far from their parents. So there is also the social media users of LGBT community in Yogyakarta is quite lot. It's quite big, and uh, and there is yeah there is a couple of buildings in Facebooks and in Twitter and also in Ask.fm because I saw it also in Jogjakarta. It's quite
Sure. So Ryan, we're just having a little bit of difficulty hearing you. So if you could come closer to your mic, but if I heard you correctly, or if I understood what your point was, is that it really depends on, I guess, the density of young people. So what makes Yogyakarta different, being outside of the capital cities, that there's a lot of young people in Yogyakarta because it's a student town, and I guess it changes from a place to place basis on how it impacts in a non-urban setting. Is that correct? Ryan, hello, you still with us? Okay, I think Ryan might need to reconnect. Um,
do you hear me?
yes, thank you. Great to have you back.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, um, it's quite different. It's actually quite different if you're talking about bullying in social media in a social media between urban and rural because it depends how the young people connected to the internet. So yeah, if in a rural area.
Oh, Ryan. Oh, Okay, so just to wrap up his point there, I mean, he was saying that there's a distinction between rural and urban areas, but it's also that distinction comes in how people are accessing the internet, and perhaps in rural settings, the devices, the platforms are available, and also the social networks are formed will be quite different depending on what is popular, the composition of the town, the dynamics of the town there. But I do think the point, if I could risk interpreting this, is that different approaches are needed for different locations. I want to acknowledge that Diz has also joined us from Indonesia as well, and will be speaking further about different communities, different community responses to cyberbullying, and also touch back on the issues and how we can be supporting education approaches as well. So at this point, we want to bring in Diz. So Diz, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, very nice and clearly. Thank you for your patience there. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, after all the technical difficulties. But I'm okay now.
Great. So Diz, can you just introduce yourself and let us know which organization you're from?
Okay, I am from Adenari Institute. It's a lesbian, bisexual, and a female-to-male transgenders organization based in Jakarta. I work there as the coordinator for the counselors in the LGBT Crisis Center. So what I do every day is basically providing assistance for LBTs who experience violence based on their sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and bodies.
Okay, thank you, Diz. And so seeing as though you're able to join us now, how have you observed cyberbullying affecting lesbian, bisexual, and trans women in Jakarta?
I think it's still a big problem in Jakarta. I want to echo something that Nada had said about how even the sub-community cannot accept someone who is different. Well, in Indonesia, one of the differences that we can observe is that there are lesbians, bisexuals, and transgenders who are wearing headscarves, who are wearing hijab, and both people outside the community and some people in the sub-community still cannot accept that. So we have cases where someone, a client who wear hijab, come out on the Facebook showing that she is in a relationship with a woman, but then she start getting this verses of Quran thrown at her, and then she was asked to repent her sins. She was asked to take off her hijab because she was seen as undeserving to wearing one. So I think, yeah, that is still a big problem. But continuing on education, I really agree that it is very important. What we can do in the civil society in Jakarta is we try to be involved in that education and teach other people, teach the students about sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and violence based on SOGIP.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit more, because we're moving the discussion about how different community groups and civil society and the private sector are responding to cyberbullying and I guess its connection with broader issues around abuse and violence and discrimination. So can you tell us a little bit more about how your organization is directly trying to respond to the issue?
Okay, what Adenari Institute is trying to is that we try to give informations about what is cyberbullying. Well, we don't focusly work for bullying issues or cyberbullying issues because we work for any kind of violence against LBT, but we try to write on our Facebook timelines, in our Facebook closed groups about that, and try to let people know that it is not okay to attack people based on anything on social media. And then we also try to let them know that it is violence when someone threatens you to spread your private or video on the internet and something like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, and following on that discussion about the various community responses there, and thank you just for sharing the work that is being done in Jakarta. I'd like to then ask Nada as well, and welcome back, Ryan.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We'll come back to you in just a sec. I just wanted to just touch on Nada there, who's been waiting patiently to share how they are doing work at the community level to try and address cyberbullying and abuse and violence in general. So Nada, can you let us know about the work that you've been doing?
Um, the diabetes expert is an online counseling to promote sexual health and rights for trans individuals through online platforms. Before we are gathering as a web board, and then such a huge impact from the social networking. So it's kind of like change the way that our members connecting to each other. I would like to raise some point about what we're doing is I think education is the most important, like what Benjamin just said that. But sometimes we just focusing on like the enemy outside, the phobias outside from the social institutions, and we keep working to show the diversity of humanity with them. Sometimes we forget to work on this issue, educating about sexual diversity among ourselves, among our LGBTIs members. For example, in my communities, uh, uh, referring to the cat case, okay? So in my communities, transgender women always think that, okay, being transgender woman is about to growing to be a beautiful, with a very idealistic of with being beautiful women, right? And also have to fall in love with a very nice guy. And in terms of sexuality, we're supposed to be only passive or on bed, for example. So one case, it's very important when one couple have different way of sexual interaction between each other. Like, okay, a man asking a trans woman to be on top, for example. And when this raising an issue inside the community, and everyone feel like such a huge phobia against this person and thought that it's freak. So because it's okay for you, it's your personal test, but you cannot raise this issue among us, or even bring it out to the like an out for the outers communities, because it will make us look more like freak, because it's hard for us to try to figure it out, who am I, and it's hard for us to make people understand us. So it's okay, but try to hide it.
Okay.
So yeah, it takes for a while to see how to educate transgender members to understand the diversity, and it's sensitive, but it needs like some tools or some like special event to like raise this issue and communicate among ourselves. Yes.
So social conformity within the community is a big issue as well. Before I just go on, I just want to acknowledge Justine from Justine Sass from UNESCO, who's able to join us, and also a couple of questions that have been posted in Q&A as well that we'll get to in a minute. But Nada, where are your online communities? I mean, I assume you are working in a couple of different spaces, but where are you finding the most success in engaging and at least trying to create safe spaces?
I think the web board.
Web board. Okay, is that a separate platform, or is that within an existing social media platform?
Like the web board before the social networking platform.
Okay, all right. So that's still quite active, even other than Facebook or Twitter or other places, or Google platforms. So the web board is still the most popular.
For me, I think it's because the social networking, for example, Facebook, that the information always like sharing and flooded with lots of myth and like misunderstanding concept. So it's not like what we have been doing in the web board, because we can screen what's the information or like issues that could be disseminated to educating our members. Yes, but in the like social networking like Facebook, that it's flood, the information that we're flooded like every day. Sometimes is a myth and sometimes it's fake. So but however, it's already imprint to us members I already believe that it's true.
Oh, I see, I see. Okay, so the distinction is that the web board you have as the moderator or as the administrator of the spaces, you have greater control on the quality, but on Facebook, in the spaces that you have there, there's a lot of people contributing, and sometimes the ability to assess the quality is not it makes it a bit more difficult for you as administrators. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we want to make sure we get to Justine, but I do want to give just a chance. So seeing as though we did touch on Facebook, and I also want to ask Vaishnavi from Google a follow-up question, but I do want to share with you that that Facebook did send a message that they wanted to be shared at the webinar. So I'll read this message out here. So they were saying they wanted to let everybody participating know that Facebook takes the issue of online bullying very seriously, and they have two initiatives. One is called Bullying Prevention Hub, and also Think Before You Share initiative. And both of these initiatives are part of an ongoing commitment to provide safeguards to the people who use Facebook. And we hope that by putting this information at people's fingertips, they will be able to have greater ability to resolve conflicts as they arise. And we do have these resources from Facebook available, and we'll be sharing them with everybody after the webinar, the Hangout. So it's great to see that they did at least try to send a message of support there. I'm curious, Vaishnavi, I wanted to ask if any of the organizations here who are joining us in this Hangout had a issue where they needed some sort of recourse or redress, whether somebody was under attack or under threats. What processes and policies can they rely on for Google platforms like YouTube or Google Plus or Gmail? And what processes for redress are you wanting to let the people know who are participating here? What do they have at their disposal?
There are a number of tools, but I'm going to just focus on one, which is our flagging and reporting tool. At Google, we've got a team of human engineers who sit at our global offices and spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week reviewing flagged content. A lot of the content around cyberbullying that we talk about and that we kind of tend to see comes on, say, platforms like YouTube. So when that happens, you can flag a video as being an example of cyberbullying or inciting violence or inciting hate. And then we have a community of reviewers who will look at that very, very quickly. We've had very good turnaround times. Most of the time, there's a pretty basic level at which a reviewer can look at the content. We have established community guidelines, and they can say, yes, this needs to be taken down, or no, it can stay up. But in the cases where it's a little bit more complex, there are several additional layers of review. But we really try and strike a balance between quickly taking down dangerous content and being very careful as to not overly take down, not overly censor the web or take down content that may not actually be cyberbullying to begin with. So it's a very fine balance to walk, but we've invested a lot of resources into doing that because it's really, really important to us.
Sure, and Vaishnavi, I'm curious. So, in the reporting mechanisms and the review mechanisms, are languages other than English also? I mean, is it possible for your processes to accept requests for assistance in Thai or in Bahasa Indonesia or
Right.
in Bahasa Malaysia? I mean, and also in the other languages in South Asia. I mean, so how responsive is it to the cultural needs of this region?
Right, that's a really good point. So YouTube, as a platform, is localized in several countries where we offer local versions. So, for example, I'm based in Hong Kong. We have a YouTube.hk. There's a YouTube.in. There's a YouTube.com.sg. And so when it comes to addressing concerns, if you're viewing YouTube in your country domain, you're going to see the video content in your language. You're going to see the reporting tools in your language. So it's incredibly easy to flag and report, and it's a very, very straightforward process. we've tried to minimize the amount of steps required so that really you can quickly report and flag content. I saw that there was a question from Ben. I just noticed that.
Yep, Ben, do you wanna share your question?
It's interesting because I think for the last hour we've been talking about the whole balance between anonymity and having a safe space online, and you brought up the point about that balance. So I just want to ask, is the balance different towards LGBTIs on online space and versus the general public? Because we all know that there is a very huge stark in research, in terms of the difference. Do you think that difference is actually apparent for Google? Yeah.
So I'd say that our policies are pretty uniform across the board in the sense that any video that incites hate regardless of the group that it's targeting. But that said, there are definitely communities and groups that are much more the target of such videos than say other groups. So our standards don't change because we've got very strict set of standards that we firmly believe in, and we just had a few conversations about this with NGOs over the last few days across the region. But in terms of how much attention, but in terms of being very aware that these issues do come up more in marginalized communities or communities with a history of violence against them or a history of exclusion or oppression, we're very, very aware of that, definitely. And I think that's where NGOs and civil society groups like yourselves are so valuable to us. We do a lot of partnerships with third parties across the region, with NGOs across the region. And one example of that is we have a Google Safety Center, which is a one-stop shop for online safety in each country, and it's localized into many, many different languages, including most of the Southeast Asian markets. So on that site, we actually also have a link to third parties, local third parties. So if you are an NGO with the capacity to handle a lot of inquiries, or you want to, position yourselves as a resource for the community, we can definitely help you get more visibility by putting you on our site, on our Google Safety Center. But that really shows kind of the need for partnership between different stakeholders. Because at the end of the day, we are one company. We're one company in one industry dealing with this specific issue. But the more stakeholders we can involve in the ecosystem, and that means educators, governments, parents, students themselves, NGOs, the much more kind of all-rounded the solution becomes. And then the one final thing I just want to say about this is that, when we talk about cyberbullying, it's really easy to overestimate the maturity and development of the bully themselves. Very often, like we've noticed, a lot of these bullies are kids, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids who do not understand the severity of what they're doing. And if you were to ask them, would you consider yourself a bully? They'd say, absolutely not. Like, I just made a, negative comment online. I just told someone to kill himself online. I'm not a bully. And they would be really shocked at that definition. So that's where kind of this education and awareness becomes really critical, because you can really play a very active part in stopping that kind of mindset at a very early age.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Justine, you've been waiting patiently, and I want to let you know that we did speak briefly about the research being conducted by UNESCO in Thailand. Timo was able to help us out and give us some context there, and I would assume that a lot of the data that is being gathered would be quite useful for the likes of Google and as well as the other community partners who are joining us there. So that might be an opportunity for further collaboration later. But Justine, just to help bring you into the conversation here, there was one question posted by Neltan specifically about the role of education, and that did come up earlier on. And the question is whether or not education around responsible use of information communication technologies and online safety, should there be curriculums on these subjects? Should they be normalized at the Ministry of Education level? I mean, what's your take on that?
Okay, so first I'd like to apologize for being an hour late to the webinar. I'm an example of a misuse of technology in a bit of a different way. I set up my Microsoft Outlook calendar on the wrong time zone, so I'm extremely sorry about not being on time at all.
No, we're glad to have you here already, Justine. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm enormously apologetic. So we've been looking at this issue in the context of, so I work at UNESCO, and we've been looking at the issue of bullying in schools. But obviously, I'm sure, as was discussed in previously, there's a lot of data suggesting that what happened, that they're linked, right? So that LGBT young people are experiencing bullying in schools of very different kinds, and there's a lot of on-school bullying that's happening at the same time. And the research that we've been looking at says exactly that. So it says, one, that we don't have enough research, but then two, that what we do know is that many LGBT young people are affected, and there are studies that are suggesting that they're more affected than their heterosexual peers. In terms of what the education sector can do, there's definitely a role for both education policies to be looking at it. So we looked at in the region whether bullying and violence in schools policies incorporate the issue of cyberbullying, and we could only find one country actually that had cyberbullying in its education and violence policy. That was the Philippines, the anti-bullying law there. In terms of curriculum, certainly there's a role for looking at ICTs, both in terms of how they can enhance all young people's well-being, but then also the sort of safe and responsible use of ICTs. And so UNESCO as an organization has been looking at this in two ways. One in terms of the work that we do around bullying on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. And then there's the second thing, which is really the use of ICTs in education and how can curriculum build this sort of digital citizenship. And so there's been a review of that in the region, and there's certainly a role for curriculum, many different types of curriculum. So both it can be incorporated in sexuality education, but in terms of talking about cyberbullying in particular, but then it can also be linked into just the general kind of ICT work that's happening in a lot of schools, particularly in some of the developed countries of East Asia.
So how would you assess the level of receptiveness, at least at the policy level, on two levels? So first of all, this idea of digital citizenship, so what is the level of receptiveness there? And then the sexual orientation and gender identity piece. I mean, what's your take on progress in implementing both of those themes into curricula?
So in terms of linking your first question around digital citizenship, I think we are seeing that in a number of the countries in East Asia in particular. So that is being brought into curriculum. But again, these are the more developed countries that I would say that are making more use of technologies. In terms of those curriculum that are, or those interventions, not necessarily curriculum, but there's a lot that can be done outside of curriculum too to build digital citizenship. And that's specific to LGBT, I would say there's only really a handful of countries in the region that are doing that. Australia has a really good Safe Schools program that's all throughout the region that has a very strong focus on same-sex attracted youth and gender questioning youth. New Zealand, maybe we could also put forward as an interesting example as well, but I think they're probably the only two that I'm aware of that are strong ones.
So perhaps more advocacy on our side is needed, especially of the education sector.
I think so.
Yeah. There are a couple of questions that I want to make sure we have time for, but before we just go to the open questions, I do want to give a chance to Ryan and also to Timo to talk a little bit more about the work that is being done at the community level there to combat cyberbullying or in general LGBT abuse and discrimination against LGBT and providing care and support. Ryan, can you tell us about the work that Aris Pelangi is doing to address this issue?
Okay, so Aris Pelangi had a program named Anti-Bullying Education. So we educate, we going to to school to giving educations about bullying and how to prevent that. And because of if we are going with the LGBT issues, it will be dismissed in Indonesia. So we are going with how to see people in the different expressions, gender expressions. So So how to not bully a student with a different expression, such as a feminine boy or a masculine girl. So so we starting in so we start with that, and then now the issues of anti-bullying is raising in Indonesia. So we also have a collaborations with the we also have a plan to make a collaborations with the uh, uh, Ministry of Educations to like making a bullying trainings among teachers and headmasters in school in Jakarta, because of some of bullying cases is done by the the teachers and the headmasters also. So it's important to us to give a informations about bullying into the teachers and headmasters.
Mm. Great to hear. Great to hear that, Ryan. And Timo, do you have something that you want to add in terms of community responses?
Well, for B Change itself, what B can offer at the moment is a sort of a package for young LGBTs. They can seek the help of community managers by chatting, by messages, or by looking for other service providers through the service maps which are available on the app. And the community managers can also help to identify or refer to those service providers. That's one thing. But also there are videos and things like this webinar that we are arranging now to raise more awareness more generally.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that there. And so we're running into the last 10 minutes of this hangout, and I do want to leave some time for some open questions here. And if there was one hot topic that I did see on the group chat was this questions about false reporting. So who Diz, would you like to talk about that? Hello, Diz. Yes, hi.
Oh, okay. You can hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay. So what I mean with false reporting is in Indonesia, the Ministry of Information, I think, have these policies about positive internet. It's quite a program to protect children from accessing pornography and the likes. But then the banning of sites is based on reporting from the society. So what I mean with false reporting is that when there are a lot of people who are against LGBT groups in Indonesia go on to reporting our sites to the Ministry of Information, then the Ministry of Information will take our websites down. I've seen this happen in like last year or the year before, and it also happened a couple of times or 3 times to Ardanari Institute's websites. Therefore, that's why we keep on changing our servers, and now we have different servers for our websites.
Okay, thank you. So false reporting in the context that other members of civil society are reporting the educational material and the work that is being done by LGBT groups as being countering against the law, and in that case, it's counterproductive for trying to address the issues that we've been talking about here. I assume that there's also a different take on it in the Singapore context as well as in the Thai context. Ben, you want to talk about that a bit?
Actually, it's exactly like what happened to the Pink Dot video as I was talking earlier. That is what you said, there's a lot of false reporting with flagging of certain videos that are educational and they're supposed to be helping the LGBTI community, but they're flagged as, pornography or nudity, and then the immediate response from service providers like Facebook or Google is to take them down. And then, what we struggle at the back end is to find out like what exactly is happening. I think also a very good example was what happened 2 years ago. The Ministry of the Health Promotion Board in Singapore actually published like a sexuality education guide online, and it did include like a few LGBTI friendly services. And because there was such a huge backlash from the conservatives, they actually had to take down the LGBTI friendly services just to appease them. and to make it a bit more neutral. So that itself is actually a very good example in how, we can have all these services, but in terms of getting the reach to the masses, it's hampered right from the policies from the government and also sometimes the service providers.
Right. In Nabila or Nada, how was your response to this as an issue in terms of false reporting and the ability to distribute these type of resources in Malaysia? I'm sure that you have your own take on this.
I think with the backlash, there's also it also opens up opportunities for wider dissemination of information, because even though we're getting all these feedback and it's all public, and a lot of people can see that the violence of this, and a lot of people can come to their senses, is what I'm saying. Is that because the discourse is now more public instead of going behind our backs, and it's educational in a sense.
Right.
The lash that we're feeling, yeah.
Right.
And it's a good thing that we're having these kind of talks right now, because we are reacting in a way that it is beneficial for everyone. We're actually using this platform to bring more awareness.
Mm-hmm. Before I go back to Vaishnavi, Nada, do you have something to say in terms of false reporting, or I guess the flip side of it is freedom of access to information? Nada?
Actually, Nada asked me to say this on her behalf.
Okay.
We are having such a lot of these problems from within the LGBTIQ community here in Thailand, rather than from the outside. So it's a matter of how we sort of manage our own ranks. But also it's a challenge, I guess, for service providers like Facebook or Google to really make the effort to see what is really inappropriate and what is not. So that's something we can only hope for, but cannot really do much about.
Okay, so Vaishnavi, I mean, I'm just wondering, is there any opportunities for collaboration, or perhaps allowing some way where the community, the present here, the being represented here, could at least be part of the process to try and avoid these situations where important information, number one, is not getting to the people who need to see it?
Yeah, I think the idea of making sure that things are correctly flagged and reported is a really big issue. It's why we have such a big team of people who manually review every report and every flag that comes in. Generally, I like to think that we're pretty good about making a very clear, making those judgments about what does constitute something that needs to be taken down and what doesn't. But it's also important to note that there's more than 100 hours of YouTube videos uploaded to the platform every minute. So by the law of large numbers, I'm sure there will be one or two cases or a few cases where we don't get it right. And in those cases, this is also why I think partnership and relationships with civil society, like groups like you guys, is so important, because you can alert us if you believe that something has been taken down wrongly.
Right.
But we really put a lot of time into this, and having seen some of those review processes for myself, I mean, there's a very thoughtful debate that goes into which videos stay up and which ones stay down. And generally, when it comes to LGBTI issues, especially, I think we're, as a company, very aligned with your values, and so we're always very supportive of keeping that material up.
Great. Great, thank you. And on that note, unfortunately, we are out of time, but we do want to make sure that we allow for the discussion to continue online of all spaces. So we invite everybody to stay connected with us via the B web app, b-me.net. We'll also be able to put up resources and things that people want to share via the event page for this Hangout. So that will be a way where we can keep in contact directly after this Hangout. But we do thank everybody for their time on this Saturday afternoon, and we hope that this is just the beginning of a longer collaboration. So thank you, everybody, for your patience and for sharing what you have, and we look forward to seeing you online. Thank you.